Welcome back. In this session we will start using Apache to host a website. So basically we want to turn our Kali Linux into a web server. There are, as always, some issues here and there we will have to overcome, which are linked to our security settings. And we will see this even in a more tricky manner when we move to SSH as an alternative way to actually get remote access to Linux or our Windows system. If you want to know more about the Apache web server, there is a lot of documentation available for different systems. So here's one for a Linux distribution, Ubuntu, which also can run on Windows, and also on Windows itself there is ample of documentation available. So I used that to put together this particular lecture. And now let me move back into my virtual machine. Here we are. So that's my Kali Linux up and running. I opened my terminal, and the first thing I want to do is I want to actually have a look at what are my settings. So what am I using? What is my IP address, and so on, because end of the day this is very important if we want to connect our Kali Linux with our main operating system, for instance. There are various commands you can use. So one of them, which I think we used before, is AP and then using option A. So that gives you information about your IP address. You see this here in the second part under the INET, so that's your IP address here. It might be useful already to note this down. That's an internal IP address we use. You will have something similar on your system. Again, it depends also on your network settings, and I come to this in the next session when it comes to some troubleshooting issues. And up here you have the local host. So that LO would be some information about your local host. So that one is the address we will also have to have in mind when it comes to hosting our website. So that's the one we can use in our browser to get access to that. Good, you get further information. I don't want to go into this at this point. Another one to look for is the ifconfig. That's another command which gives you similar information. So again, you have here your IP address. So please note that down for your system, not for my system. And here is again your local host address. Yeah, so that's quite useful. Also called, you see this here, a loopback. So that's basically a local host. Good, so we have looked this up. On your Windows machine there is a similar command to get this information. So if you just type in here cmd, you will get the command prompts. Now you are on your main operating system. If you use a Windows machine, of course in Mac OS it looks different, and in this case it's ipconfig to get your details, and in here again you have your IP address. Yeah, that's the one, IPv4. Note this down again on your system, and let's have a bit of fun in a minute. The first thing which might be useful before we start the Apache service is to try to ping the different machines. So on your Kali you can try to ping your Windows machine. So I now just type in my IP address, already actually typed this before, and try to ping it. Okay, I just try to execute that. And now this basically tries to reach my Windows machine and just see, do you respond? Are you there? Okay, so it's doing some pings. It doesn't seem to do much, so I use now Control-C to interrupt this. But as you can see, I actually 19 times tried to transmit. I received nothing. I lost everything. So put differently, I could not reach my Windows machine. Now there are many reasons why this might happen. And that's the trouble here. You have to go through various options. Again, when you enter into any difficulty, the first thing you should really do is try to fix it yourself. There is ample of help available on various online communities, in particular on Linux, Windows. There are so many people out there with similar problems. Now I just walk you through a few things which are likely to be an issue. The obvious culprit here is your firewall. Yeah, it's quite likely that your firewall might block that. Before we go there, I try the opposite direction. So again, CMD, I go into my Windows prompt. So on my Windows machine, I now try to connect to my Kali. So again, I ping here and I type in the IP address, which I find up there, 1177, and just see what happens. And that seems to work, so there is no loss. So actually I can reach my Kali, but I can't reach my Windows. Now this is this indicates that most likely something is blocking it on my main operating system. And the obvious culprit here is it's my firewall. Now it depends how you organize your security on your system. Yeah, so this will depend on how to fix that. You can go into firewall settings, and I might show you this later when we talk about SSH. But in my case, my firewall is actually managed in my McAfee subscription. So I just go to my security settings in here, and I switch it off, basically. Yeah, of course it's not recommended to do this, so I turn off my firewall. I just do it for a short time, 15 minutes, just for this exercise, and I try to ping again. Yeah, so I go back to my command and I ping again and see what happens. Yeah, now this looks much better. And of course now McAfee is unhappy because it assumes we are under attack. Yeah, okay, I stop that now. Stop that here. Control-C, stop that. So here it works fine. So now I have a connection which is perfectly fine. Of course, you should not leave yourself exposed for too long. And of course, that's a bit of an issue you will face when you work on it. Okay, great. I have now many threads because I did it myself. I turn on the firewall. So that's fine. So we are now back on and it should be fine. I can try again to ping and it should be now blocked. Yeah, it will try to connect, but it won't happen. I just Control-C, I stop that, and we are protected. So it's kind of a nice thing to exercise. So the thing is, when you play around these cybersecurity problems, that can be quite a challenge when you work with university computers, because there you can't just disable firewalls. That's not really a good possibility. So many things I can really show you ideally with my home system, yeah, because of course I have the rights to do certain things which otherwise I couldn't. Yeah, okay, so that's the first thing we have tried, so that worked quite well. The next thing I now want to do is I want to start turning my Kali into a web server. There are different things you can do in this case. I will go for an easy option using the Apache server, which I think is quite good. It's easy and it should run, fingers crossed. Yeah, the first thing I want to do is I want to open actually my browser. So on Kali you also have a web browser. You might not have actually seen this, but you can just do things you usually do on a web browser. I now move to HTTP. I move now to my local host, which I identified before, which you saw before in the loopback, which is I think 1.2.0.0 and 1 in the end. It might look similar in your case. I just do that. And as you can see, nothing really happens, yeah, so because I haven't done anything yet, so nothing is displayed. Okay. Now what I do is I start here my web server. Okay, let me just do this using the Apache one. So I type in service, and then you can see Apache. That's another one status. We have to first start. So I type in service Apache 2 start. So this should start up my service. You will get now quickly a prompt to enter your root password because that has root privilege. Let me just execute that because that's execution. You need root privilege for that. So we have our password in here, and that should do it. It's always a good idea to check the status, so you just type in status at the end and see what happens. Is everything up and running? And it seems to run, so it seems to be running, which is good. I like it. And now let's go back to my browser and refresh that and see what happens. Nothing happens. Okay, that's a bit disappointing. It should actually do it. Sometimes I have to just retype that. Here we are. Sometimes I just have to refresh things and it should run. So that's just a default website. So that is the one you should now be able to see. So that you see is Apache 2. The Debian is your Linux distribution default page. And of course, then you see already where it is located. It's located at here you have your path. So that's your index HTML. So that's the site which actually is displayed, and you can of course change that setting, and you can add further things into it, and you get also a whole list of documentation which cover very well what you can actually do now, because actually what you can do now is you can just display your website here. Good. Let's maybe note down this path. So we go into var, we go www, HTML, and then we go into index and so on. Let me just have a little look there. Good. Okay. How do we do this? Well, maybe we just change directory and move there and have a little look. Yeah, let's have a look. We do var, www, HTML, and move there first and see what happens. I do my ls command and have a look. And what you see is you have your index HTML, and that's the one which was described on the browser. I will just maybe try now to minimize that. So I just move that back in here, make it be slightly bigger. Then of course I can read my index file here. So it's index, I just use the wildcard and have a little look. Okay, so now here we have our website, standard HTML, as you would expect. So if you're used to that, you know what is going on here. If you're not used to that, it doesn't really matter an awful lot. I'm also not really too much into web development. I like more the back end work, not front ends. I'm not into fancy CSS, HTML. But basically in here you could modify now the content if you want to, and it should after refreshing be displayed. Yeah. Of course you can also open this in Nano, and you could start editing, change it as you wish, and you know, that's up to you. Perfectly fine. Good. So now we have done that. We verified our index HTML. What we could do is we could now start some additional files. There's nothing to stop us. We could, for instance, put in some information in a separate file. Again, we can use nano for that. We could also use redirection from command, which is another way of storing information. Now what I want to do is I just want to do something very, very simple. I just use the echo command. Echo is basically like a print function on Python. I just put in actually hello world in here. Why not? Why not actually? Let's do that. And then I use redirection, if you remember, and move it to a file, and I just call this indeed my file. Why not? As you wish. So that should do it. And if you now do ls -l, you oops, permission denied. Oh, that's really sad. It doesn't permit me. Now, how can we do it? Well, we can simply go into root and force it. So let's do that. I could either do sudo su or just use the sudo in front of it. I change into root. Let's do that. It's fun. So let's do that, and I'm back in root. Ha. Now I can do things. Good, let's go do that as requested. So I can do the echo one, so that basically a print function, move this into my file. Good, I do an exit, so I move out of root, have a look at how this looks like. And here we are, now we have my file here. Okay, that's good. That's good, okay, fine. So I go back in here, and I could, in theory, link that now to my file. And here we are. It does actually work. I just have to move things a bit. It doesn't look great, obviously, but basically you put in just hello world in here, and it's in your file. And of course you can add more things into it. We can use an append option and do some fancy stuff. We can do, of course, a fully fledged HTML site here as well. But it's just here about the principle. Yeah, so basically what we have achieved is we are running our own website on our local host. We are able to have access to that using our browser. And that's basically what we have achieved in this session. The last thing I want to do is I want to shut the system down. So I just do a stop and shut it down. And again, I get the prompt here. I have a little look. I just check the status, and it should be now not active anymore. It's inactive, so that should be fine. Now, when you go back to your browser, it might need to refresh. You have to sometimes also remove any stored content. Otherwise, it will just still display the previous one. We can just try that. Okay, so it still displays the previous one, but you can change that in settings. Yeah, you can just go to preferences, and somewhere here, privacy security, I think, is down there, clear data. Yeah, so there's a clear data. So let me just clear all the data. Clear now. Okay, and do that again, and you see now off it is. Yeah, so sometimes you have to do this. You have to refresh properly and clear any data, because it stores, of course, this information. Just to make things faster. That's the whole idea of it. Okay, so now we are again out. So we switched off our Apache web server, so that's all fine. So we should be good to go into the next problem, which would be SSH, which is a little bit more complicated, and there are more exciting errors that could actually happen. There are alternative commands which you see on the slides using the system control commands, which are fine. They give you some more options as well. Again, I refer to the manual for further details in this particular case, but in the next session we focus on SSH and how to get access remotely to our Kali machine and potentially take it over. So that's the idea. Of course, at the moment we still have all the passwords and user details. We don't really do any actual hacking. Okay, I'll see you in the next session.